It was a ghastly tale of a winter's night. One of an invisible killer and a crime perpetrated on the pavement along Briar Road. As the victim lay at death's door, the mystery of just who had stabbed the young lady from behind had been resolved. But no sooner had my friend saved that Eastern Exchange student from his harrowing plight, than in the dim, flickering shadows of gaslight did a second bizarre crime rend the stillness of that very night. I dare say most can still recall the sensational headlines of the day. Haunted apartment of death, the condemned criminal's curse, the dread demon of coal gas. Yet, though the great detective had at once discerned the truth upon his arrival at the scene, it only proved to be the overture that announced the rising of the curtain on a most tragic play.
My name is Rinosuke Naruhodo. I'm a fledgling lawyer, just started out on my journey. 6 months ago, I arrived as a visiting student of law. Having made a long voyage across the sea from the Empire of Japan to here, London, England. And on my way, in quite an extraordinary circumstances, I made the acquaintance of a world-famous detective. Currently, I reside in the attic of the detective's own lodgings, from where I run my legal consultancy of sorts. I've successfully defended a number of clients in Britain's highest court, the Old Bailey. But since a particularly grueling and unforgivable legal battle 4 months ago now, I haven't returned to the courtroom. In truth, I've lost my right to return. But the epic trial was just one small part of an epic tale. A tale which was now about to awaken from slumber. Thanks to a letter that arrived this morning from my homeland. I smile waving from upstairs. Must nearly be time for breakfast. Better go down to Mr. Sholmes' suite. Say good morning to the great detective and his flatmate. August 30th, 7:28 a.m. Sholmes' suite. Ah, Bruno, good. I was just about to call up to you. The bacon's ready. Good morning, Harris. Smells delicious as usual. Before we eat, though, I have some news. Had a surprise. Shh! Not another word, Mr. Naruhodo. This could just be abstruse thing for my pre-breakfast stagnation, repelling mental simulation, my dear fellow. Morning to you too, Mr. Sholmes. Ah, yes, I see. So that is it. Get out of my face, Sholmes. The truth is clear to me as day. My facilities of observation have revealed it again. But what are you talking about? You, Mr. Naruhodo, you have, this very morning, met with a surprise. Well, is that not the case? Really, my dear fellow, it barely warrants explanation. Firstly, your hair is particularly unkempt, somewhat reminiscent of the bird's nest. That's how it always is, Sholmes. Secondly, you have neglected to fasten the third button on your jacket. Clearly, when considered together, these two facts point to have been flustered in this morning. Can I talk now? But of course. Though I don't look for admiration, you understand. My hair always looks like this. It's been the way since I first met you. Oh, it has? And the button was ripped off last night, if you remember. By you. Hurley pulled off your button? Ah, yes, I recall the incident now. It was after supper, was it not? As the evening advanced, I picked up my violin and began to play the wailing notes of a haunting tune. But then, to my utter dismay, the third string snapped. And why did it have to happen? Why? Little wonder then. That's why my vaccination. I grabbed the first button I saw and ripped it from the proper place. Well, I'd like it back now, please. It's troubling me that I can't fasten my jacket. And it's troubling me that you expect me to know where it is. Somewhere thereabouts on the floor, I presume. Dang it, Sholmes. What matters at the present time, my dear fellow, is simply whether or not my deduction was unerring. But Hurley, Rose said it when he came in, didn't he? I had a surprise this morning. He's like, oh. Well, that really is a surprise. Yes, this man is the pride of the British Empire. The famous consulting detective, Mr. Sherlock Sholmes. There can't be a single person in the world who doesn't know his name. Alright then, enough of this silly conversation. Come and eat this bacon before it gets cold. And I have a new herbal tea for you to try. My latest special blend. And here we have Iris Wilson, Mr. Sholmes' lodger and companion. Truly exceptional young girl, who's the author of the highly successful serialization here in London. Yes, The Adventures of Sherlock Sholmes, as published in Rancid magazine. So, Mr. Naruhodo, won't you put us out of our misery? What surprised you this fine morning? Ah, well, I received a letter from Japan. Oh, from Susie, you mean? Was it? Really? That's right. She had some rather startling news, in fact. Ah, intriguing indeed. You must tell us all about it over breakfast. Oh yes, what fun! This is a letter that arrived this morning from Japan. Arrived from Japan this morning by International Post. Oh, how lovely! Look at this beautiful writing. I wish I could read it. And how is your judicial assistant faring, may I ask? She's very well, thank you. In fact, according to what she's written, she actually appeared as a lawyer at the Japanese Supreme Court and won a case. Ah, really? Oh, isn't she wonderful? A cut above your good self, my dear fellow. I've won cases too, you know. Apparently, Mr. Natsume appeared in a trial as a witness. Natsume. No, I don't recall that name. Of course you do. Well, you helped that man twice. You know, in those two cases that took place on Briar Road 6 months ago. Ah, the mustache-twitchy man with the somewhat feline eyes and mustache. He didn't have two mustaches, Hurley. Yes, who could forget those two cases? They made a very deep impression on me. Although I must confess, the details are a little hazy now. A very deep impression they made on you, clearly. So, what was the startling news that penned by Miss Susato? Do you remember the case that haunted the lodgings, Mr. Jones? Ah, yes. It's very interesting, you know. I don't feel entirely uncertain that the case of that nature did not occur. She's totally forgotten, then. Anyway, in her letter, Miss Susato asked that we read over her case notes again and investigate further. Though it took place half a year ago, for what purpose? Because something that Mr. Natsume said to her, apparently. He suggested that the real reason why she was called back to Japan so suddenly might have something to do with the case of the haunted lodgings. Oh? On Mr. Natsume's return to Japan, Miss Sasato's father questioned him about the case, she says. And something Mr. Natsume said appeared to trouble Professor Mikotoba, prompting him to send that telegram. Oh, that case? Yes. It was very strange, wasn't it? Yes. And I compiled the whole story into a nice, neat manuscript, ready for publication, too. But then Hurley was all funny about it, remember? He was very mean. The story must not be published, you said. Very mysteriously as well. Really? I said that? Are you sure? Do you perhaps know something about it as well, Mr. Jones? But why Miss Susato suddenly told 4 months ago that she had returned to Japan? It's been 4 months since we waved Susie off at Dover. It was such a shock, wasn't it? The way she just suddenly announced that she had to go back to Japan. Indeed it was, due to a telegram she received from her homeland, I believe. That's right, telling her to return urgently. Yes, because her father had passed away. No. It's just that he was suffering from a high fever, the cause of which was unknown. He's not dead. But according to this letter, that news about her father's fever was just a ruse. A ruse? So Susie's daddy lied to her so that she'd make the voyage back home? Why would he do that? I have to admit, I have absolutely no idea. But she believes it's almost certainly related to the case of the haunted lodgings. Summoning her back to Japan so suddenly like that. I wonder what Miss Susato's father is hiding. Hurley, do you know what it's all about? Well, who can say? What? But you said... Please, I have engagements, my dear fellow. My calendar is quite surprisingly full today. As a stringent analysis of the matter would be excessive, I feel, even if I were quite a leisure. So, man the fort in my absence, won't you, Iris? I will, Hurley. Don't worry. See you later. Bye, Sholmes. He scudded off rather quickly there. Seems perhaps Professor Mikotoba isn't the only person hiding something here. So Seki-san was involved in 2 cases, but only one of them was forbidden from being published. By, of all people, Mr. Sholmes. Aha! I found them at last! Iris, are they... The notes about the case. That's right. Susie and I compiled them together. The case of the haunted lodgings. You want to read them, Runa? Yes. Absolutely. Thank you, Iris. I have no idea what secrets could still be hiding in the shadows of this case. Perhaps if I read over the notes again, something might come to light. That's a spirit. So, Iris and I decided to read over the case notes again together. Everything from what happened to our investigation in the fierce battle in the court that followed. Revealing every detail. I just need to find a clue, and I have all the time in the world. Because, of course, I'm no longer allowed to practice law in the courts of Great Britain. Yeah, because they're all butthurt because Ryunosuke went to whatever lengths he had to prove Gina not guilty by exposing government secrets. It was 6 months ago. A mysterious incident that unfolded in the wintry streets of London. A young woman was found lying on the snowy pavement on Briar Road with a knife in her back. Fortunately, her life was spared, but she was unconscious for several days following the incident. The fog was thick, and nobody saw her attacker, but, by a cruel twist of fate, a visiting Japanese student was walking behind her at the time, and was duly arrested. That man was Soseki-san, and the man who effected his arrest was Mr. Sholmes. Believing in our compatriot's innocence, Susato-san and I decided to represent Soseki-san in court. And, after a grueling trial of many twists and turns, we finally managed to prove his innocence. Joyful, joyous, jubilation! Was the man's reaction after the trial, but his jubilant jubilation was short-lived. Received a telegram from Mr. Sholmes the following morning. The victim of the Briar Road stabbing has regained consciousness. The victim had hurried to the parts at once. Susato and I summoned a hansom and headed immediately to the hospital. Okay, so we're in the past right now. 21st of February, 5:30 a.m., St. Bartholomew's Hospital Recovery Ward. There you are at last! Good morning, Mr. Sholmes. I think not. Oh? You're late. What on earth took you so long? Your telegram only arrived at 5 o'clock, Mr. Sholmes. And it's a 20-minute ride to the hospital. That's right. And it's 5:30 now. I think we made very good time. The time is utterly irrelevant. The fact is, I have been waiting for what has felt like an eternity. Aha. In point of fact, I myself was awoken at 4 this morning by a telegram boy. And feeling it was somewhat unjust that I alone had been roused at such an hour, I sent one to you. Well, thanks for that. Anyway, you're here now, so the victim is over there. She only just regained consciousness. You should introduce yourself, and I shall observe from here. That's the lady who is found on the snow-covered pavement with a knife in her back. Her name is, yes, here we are, Miss Green. Good morning. Hello, I am Ryunosuke Naruhodo, from the Empire, Japan. Oh, no, was it, oh no, was it your knife that, are you the man who? No, I'm a lawyer. And I'm Susato Mikotoba, pleased to meet you. Oh no, what, was it your knife then? Are you the one? No, I assure you. I'm Mr. Naruhodo's judicial assistant. We heard that you regained consciousness and wanted to come give you our best wishes. Best wishes? For me? Thank you. I'm Olive Green. I'm an artist. Well, no, that's not right, is it? What I mean is, I'm trying to be an artist. Well, what I really mean is I desperately wanted to be an artist. But the truth is, I don't have any talent. I know I don't. It's no wonder I was stabbed in the back. I don't think that's related, actually. Gosh, This young woman seems to bend over backwards to put herself down. Seeing as we're here, we should probably talk to her about what happened. From her perspective, I suppose. You suddenly be struck in the back by a blade as you were walking along the pavement. What a terrible experience you had, Miss Green. It was so cold that day. And the fog was so thick, I couldn't see a thing. It was 4 days ago now, I think. Is that right? Yes, that's right. I'm afraid you've been comatose all that time. But the case has been solved, hasn't it? It's been a while I've been here in the hospital, I mean. Indeed it has, my dear madam. Spectacularly, by none other than I, Urach Sholmes. Mr. Sholmes, as you well know, it was Mr. Naruhodo's hard work in the court that solved the case. Are you yet to hear what happened, Miss Green? Yes, I'm afraid so. A gentleman from the police force is supposed to be coming to filming in shortly. Oh, I see. Your coming around seems to have made everyone frantically busy. I'm so sorry. I never should have regained consciousness. How selfish of me. Olive, why? Oh no. We're also relieved that you're on the mend, Miss Green. We really are. That kind of attribute. Maybe her surname should be blue, not green. So, you're an artist, are you, Miss Green? Oh no, I couldn't possibly claim that. I'm a fledgling artist at best. I mean, I'm a student of art, really. That's a Thorndike Academy of Fine Arts. Oh my, an Academy of Fine Arts? It is such a wonderful country. Tell me, Miss Green, do you live hereabouts? Oh no, actually, I don't deserve it, but I have a lot of flat on Brixton Road. I see. How very interesting. Oh no, is it? Brixton is some 10 stops away from the underground here. And Thorndike Academy is a mere 3-minute walk from Brixton Town Center. Does that matter, Mr. Sholmes? Perhaps not, but Briar Road is far less suburbanous part of town by comparison. Dwelton knows by inferior means, including the maleficent Mr. Mustache. Inferior means? I suppose the section does fit the bill. It struck me as somewhat out of the ordinary for a young fine arts student to be walking in such a district. That's all. What's this? She suddenly clamped up. Mr. Sholmes, you should be ashamed of yourself, prying into a young maiden's private affairs. Oh, do forgive me. Do forgive me. If you don't mind. I'm being discharged shortly, so I need to pack my things. Oh, yes, of course. I will keep you. Thank you so much, Miss Green. Can I investigate their at? That must be the bag of Miss Green's personal belongings. Could have been brought here directly after she was found stabbed on the pavement. I expect a friend or family member probably brought some things for her. Right then, let's see what's inside. Same clothes or done. No, Mr. Naruhodo. You mustn't scrutinize a young maiden's personal belongings. You just have chocolates or biscuits or caramel. All sorts of medicines in your cabinet. So I have to leave it in my reach to everyone like this. Yes, you're right. I can imagine if you were peckish, you might try a whole bottle or two. Well, at least there seems to be a little lock to secure the cabinet doors. Doesn't seem to be here at the moment, so he or she is probably running around the hospital. Oh dear, how worrying. What's worrying is why they haven't discharged the patient yet. Do not feed. What is this place? A zoo? Picture of a young gentleman. Looks to be about the same age as the screen. Perhaps a special someone? Do you think? My, Mr. Naruhodo. I didn't know you had a sense for matters of heart. Not in the least. I sincerely said the first thing I thought of. Is there a Mr. Narrow Fodder here? Mr. Narrow Fodder. Narrow Fodder now? Well, if you're looking for Naruhodo, the lawyer, that's me, but... Ah, Mr. Narrow Fodder. Good. This is for you. It's a message from Mr. Saucy Natsumik. Oh my gosh. Mr. Natsume sent a message to me? But why would a policeman be delivering a message from Mr. Natsume? Exactly. What's going on? What's the Scotland Yard constable doing playing delivery boy at this time in the morning? What are you waiting for? Let me see that. Oh. Well, this is most unexpected. Something wrong, Mr. Sholmes? Is something wrong, Mr. Sholmes, he says. Have you not seen this note? No, you took it from my hand. No, how could I have? It would seem the London's criminals have no intention of letting the great detective rest. A new case calls. A case of murder, no less. We must depart at once. Murder? Call a cab. Time for the answers. But the trouble is, we've got to read Mr. Natsume's note. I think we ought to pay him a visit at his lodgings once we did. That will be entirely convenient. Convenient? What do you mean? It's all here in the note, my dear fellow. The murder we must investigate took place at Mr. Mustache's lodgings. Oh, come on. Why? Wait, what? I'll hail a farce at once. Okay, so my prediction is Gary Deb died, and it was that weird, the weirdest heck as a tenant of the building. That's my guess right now. I have no idea. I'm just guessing. It's only yesterday that Soseki-san was in court, and were dispelled doubts about his innocence. Wait, no, it can't be Gary Deb because we saw him at Gina's trial. Unless this game has very big continuity error. It very well been the unluckiest man alive. Or so it seemed at the time. But we were so soon to discover it was worse than we thought. So maybe the reverse? Like a reverse of sorts? So it's... Oh my! The gentleman is deceased without question. He's dead. Locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire. Oh, why is this happening? Why to me? I've only just got out of court yesterday. I'm finally home after 2 days of misery. And then I wake up the next day to this. No early bird should catch a worm like this. Wonderful worm without wiggle. It's turning is super fun, I know, right? I love it. Especially when I get to be overextended, like Mr. Natsume. I see you in high spirits again this morning, Mr. Mustache. Ah, that is horrible. Not that horrible. Actions. You, show up. Show yourself out the door. I never invited you. Mr. Shams came here with us. I'm quite sure he'll be able to help you, Mr. Natsume. I'm entirely at your disposal, Mr. Mustache. What can I do for you? Oh, Gregson. Here they are already. The busybodies. Ah, Inspector Gregson. What a pleasant surprise. Pleasant, is it? It gives me the heartburn every time I see your face at a crime scene, Sholmes. Ah, I deduce, Inspector, that your heartburn is the result of your exercise consumption of fried food. Well, good morning, Inspector. Alright, Gregsy. Talk. So, Inspector, what was the victim's name? Who was he? Mr. William Shamspeare. He was a lodger. As you can probably tell, he was an actor. A bit of a dead loss as it happens. We're just dead. Mr. Shamspeare was the landlord, or old Mr. Girdip, and the other lodger, Mr. Natsume, who found him. The fellow didn't raise at his usual hour, so Girdip got word and kicked the door down. But doesn't Mr. Girdip have a bad leg? Ah, yes, right there. It was that jittery Japanese hunchback over there who actually did the kicking. Really? Soseki-san? The victim was pretty hard up, it seems. Even done some time inside the prairie for petty crimes. He had no money, no place to go, no friends, so only acquaintances were the people in this house. Miserable life, and a miserable end to it. So, what exactly is Mr. Natsume still doing here? He's not involved in the investigation, so shouldn't you have sent him away from the crime scene? Well, I'm not saying it's because the fellow looks odd or something, I think, or he acts suspicious. But I thought it'd be prudent to take a statement from the cohabiter. You're really gonna accuse Soseki-san? You nearly said culprit there, didn't you? Oh dear. Mr. Natsume appears to be under suspicion again. It certainly seems that way. He does just come across as such an odd fellow, doesn't he? Poor man. How unfortunate. Yeah, what motive would Soseki-san have for killing this guy? Anyway, can't say much until the coroner gets here. But I don't think the fella's been a goner that long. The body's still warm. Even if the inspector would allow it, I don't think I could bring myself to touch a dead body. What a terrible thing to have happened. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested. It's only been 3 days since I was arrested for the incident on the pavement outside. And then, having finally regained my freedom, it starts happening all over again. endless existence of excruciating experiences. Okay, Saseki, you can stop being overboard. So the victim lived here on the ground floor, and your room is just one story up, isn't it? Yes, that's right. In a way, we are neighbors, I suppose. So did you know the victim? Were you friends? Saseki, what you... Saseki? What's the matter with Saseki-san now? It was an innocent enough question, wasn't it? Why does he seem so shaken by it? Well, I suppose he wasn't a complete stranger. But he did invite me to his room. Never! But did he invite me to his room? Never! On my honor, I swear it! What an extreme reaction. You're probably wishing you had never asked now, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? When we found him here, he was a bit rich, which is why I sent word asking you to come. There's that inspector over there. Sholmes, what are you doing? Mr. Sholmes, what are you doing? Ah, you need only to observe to know it, my dear fellow. Investigating naturally. That's not what it looks like. There's nothing natural about that pose. Mr. Sholmes, have you made some miraculous discovery? Patience, my dear madame. Patience. We've not been here in this room 5 minutes. So far, all I've managed to deduce is what actually happened. Oh goodness! But isn't everything we needed? But isn't that everything we need to know, Mr. Sholmes? Now that you propose the idea, I believe one could indeed see it that way. At the present time, I have managed to draw two incontrovertible conclusions. The first, that there was a physical struggle here last night in which the victim fought for his life. Mr. Asume? What's wrong? Is something that Mr. Sholmes said significant somehow? No, don't mind me. I forget I was here. My second conclusion is that there was a poison lingering in the air here last night that passed the victim's lips. Nonsense! Alright, Mr. Natsume. Why are you reacting so extremely to Mr. Sholmes' deductions? No, please. Pretend I'm not here. Invincible, ineffable, indestructible, insignificant. Impossible to ignore. You must tell us everything, Mr. Sholmes. Spare no detail. But of course, let the theatrical tragedy before us be unraveled by my great deductions, presented for your pleasure in 2 acts. Some truly astounding great deductions from Mr. Sholmes in the past. No doubt this will be no exception. What miracles will unfold before our eyes this time? So, my dear fellows, for your delight and wonder, let the curtain rise. For Uruk Sholmes, logical and reasoning spectacular, Act 1. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in this disconsolate room last night. Foam at the mouth of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large dining plate which contains, you'll observe, one half of a sizable bar of soap, meaningful indubitably. Why is the soap so purposely upon the dish? Like the victim's last supper, in fact. Yes! Could it be that the man was about to eat it? Of course, the fork reveals the answer. It appears that the young man's appetite was his undoing. Taking up arms in the form of his cutlery, the victim engaged in a deadly battle for his life. Yet the struggle against his hunger was in vain. For the end, he couldn't resist devouring the slippery feast. But London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was claimed by the poison that tainted the contents of the plate. Okay, for one, I already see a problem. If he ate the soap with his fork, there would be fork marks on the soap, which we do not see anything of the sort. The soap and the lathered about young man's mouth are too perfectly matched to ignore. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to excessive ingestion of a foul soap. So personally, I have a greater interest in the taste of a foul counterbalance, of course. I love how it just changes his outfit. Like, I have him in the Kitsune outfit and it just switches him back and forth between these pictures. You think they would have been smart and been like, okay, we'll program it so, like, with these pictures, if the player has them set for the Kitsune outfit, he would appear in the Kitsune outfit in those pictures. Like, how that could have been easily done. The cause of death identified as we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was it suicide or murder? The audience will recall the death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine and die alone? The single teacup suggests the answer. To draw a conclusion on such mere marriage evidence would be foolish, however certain. The careful criminal could have absconded with his own cup to cover his tracks. Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is a broken lock. No, that was broken by Natsume and Garita. The forced open now. At the time of the incident, this door was locked. And the sole key was in the victim's pocket. In other words, when the victim consumed his poison, he must have been alone. Alone with his inferior soul, where hence wafted an inferior scent. With that arcade aroma lingering in the air, the victim met his end in a tragic solitude. To take comfort only in the fact that his soul was well cleansed on his way to thereafter. Thus concludes the final act of Sherlock Holmes' great deduction. There's just one thing, Mr. Holmes. You're disposed to identify just one thing, aren't you, Mr. Naruhodo? Pray, what concerns you? Well, no matter how hungry he was, do you really think the man would have eaten soap? It's quite apparent that this man had barely a penny to his name. It is a curious thing, but to but to one so destitute, soap can suddenly appear quite irresistibly appetizing. How extraordinary. In truth, I have tried a little soap myself in the past. You've eaten it, you mean? My dear fellow, it was some time ago now. My postulation was that it would cleanse my gut. And did it? As I writhed in agony on the floor and split the contents of my stomach. Yes, I believe it did. The experience taught me a valuable lesson. Soap is quite poisonous. It has an unpleasant taste and leads to great discomfort. In summary, I cannot recommend it. Believe me, I wouldn't eat it, even if you did. Something that troubles me as well, actually. Oh? What's that? It's Mr. Natsume. Couldn't help but notice him shuddering and quivering out of the corner of my eye. Almost as if Mr. Shone's seduction has touched a nerve somehow. No, nonsense! Well, that clenched teeth episode didn't last. I think, judging by Mr. Natsume's reaction, the great detective may need some gentle corrections in order to reach the actual truth. Yes, Mr. Sholm's observations and deductions are sometimes a little too sharp. He has a tendency to hit the nail on the side of the head and drive it at an obtuse angle. When he does that, it falls to us to straighten things out. Alright then, let's see what we can do. Yeah, we can pick up the keywords and brilliant deductions, and discreetly exchange them for some that make a little more sense. If we can do that, I'm sure we'll arrive at what Mr. Sholmes meant to say in the first place. In that case, are you ready for the second performance of the day? Once again, my dear fellows, for your continued delight and wonder, let the curtain rise for Sherlock Sholmes' Logical and Reason Spectacular, Act 1. Careful observation of the victim reveals to us the events that transpired in the disclosure room last night. One of the deceased clearly indicates the use of poison. Next to the victim, we notice a large standing plate which contains, you will observe, half a silo bottle, meaningful and dubious. Like the victim's last supper, yes. Could be that this man was about to eat it. Of course, the fork reveals the answer. You can't deny that the fork implies the man was eating something or about to eat something, unless the fork was planted. Yes, that's true. If I were to decide to eat some soap, I should prefer to use the fork than attempt to eat it with chopsticks. Of course, only half the bar of soap is left on the plate. Might there be some other explanation? Something material that proves whether or not the man ate soap. Upside. So, okay, so soap's there. I'm assuming that's it. Wait, what? That is... Oh, okay, that's his hat. But I'm guessing it's this other person.
Take that!
Could it be that this man was about to eat it? Of course. The other piece of soap reveals the answer. it being the other half of the soap on the table. In short, the victim was not eating soap at all. But it's obvious, really, for no depths of hunger could drive any man to attempt to eat soap. Yet you've admitted yourself that you've eaten soap, Sholmes. Even I, with my unconscious zest for practical knowledge, only took a single bite. But it begs the question of how the man was poisoned, because there's no signs of food on the table. An excellent observation, Mr. Naruto, and one that furnishes us with the answer we seek. For London's foul soap is besmirched by foul poison. Yes, the victim's life was cleaned by poison, tainted by the contents of the plate. That's probably the teacup. Jones is still pushing the soap argument then. Perhaps he's suggesting the man licked soap rather than ate it? If soap in London is that poisonous, I don't think I want to be washing my hands with it. No signs of food in this room at all. Of course, food isn't the only thing that passes people's lips, is it?
Take that!
Yes, the victim's life was claimed by poison that tainted the teacup. Indeed, cups have been the vessel of a choice for practicing poisoners over the centuries. As it appears that the victim drank every last drop. There's no sign of food anywhere in the room. Which leads us to the immutable conclusion. The cause of death was clearly intoxication due to ingestion of poison contained in this teacup. Hey, Corbin. The cause of death identified as we proceed to Act 2, where we ponder the next question. Was it suicide or murder? The audience will recall that the death occurred during the victim's last supper. Did the man dine alone? The single teacup suggests the answer. Ah, the western vessel for infused hot drinks again. It's already featured heavily in our introduction so far. Yes, we can imagine that shortly before his death, Mr. Shakespeare was having a drink of tea. There would be nothing remarkable about that, but what troubles me is Mr. Natsume's reaction when he heard Sholmes suggest it. More to the seduction than it seems. Let's closely examine the crime scene again for some more clues.
Take that!
Did the man dine alone? This other teacup suggests the answer. Yes, there are two teacups in the room all along. Ha! In other words, it's a strong indication that the victim's last supper. There was a guest present. And that silhouette looks like the older guy from Case 2. Forget what his name was. At the very least, we can now say it with certainty. Somebody else was here in this room last night, taking tea with the victim. What are you talking about? Utterly unbelievable, unjust, unreasonable. To draw a conclusion on such mirage evidence would be foolish, however, certainly. In which case, what more can we deduce about this possible guest at the table? Well, allow me to lift the veil of doubt, my dear fellow. Do you mean to say you know who exactly was in this room at the time of the victim's death? Indeed. What reveals the answer, of course, is a broken lock. I'm not sure I like where this deduction is going. Afraid it's too late to go back. Nah, halcyon days of eating too much soap. The identity as the guest who was here last night when the victim passed away is something I have very bad feeling about. Well, you can try to ignore your feelings, but we cannot ignore the truth, Mr. Naruhodo. No, I suppose not. Time to look around again. It's empty. Empty of liquid, but full of air. Makes you think, doesn't it? Makes me think that you're full of hot air. Should we think about who else was in the room this time? Bother. So that's not Christmas. Elect's most definitely broken, isn't it? Doors kicked in by Mr. Natsume, according to what Mr. Garrett told the inspector. Who knows what sort of little legs had so much strength in them? Perhaps this says more about the poor state of the door than Mr. Natsume's strengths. Oh, there's glasses over here. But I can't inspect them. Don't tell me this is Natsume's books. First glance, it seems to be honest. What are these books initially? I wonder what they are. Let's see. Titles read. I'm mad now. These are Natsume's books. Wait, I'm sure I've heard those titles before. Could use this incredible coincidence, but they're exactly the same three books that Mr. Natsume purchased the other day. What? It's an idea, unfortunate incident when Miss Green was stabbed. So the second-hand son had just been to book club and brought him that night. Bought him, that's right. Another three titles are here in the room of the victim. Mr. Natsume claims to have never been here before. But weren't the books confiscated by the police? Like, they were left at the scene. So how did Mr. Natsume get them back?
Take that!
Indeed, what reveals the answer, of course, is a pile of familiar books. Quite so. It's no mere coincidence that these three titles are here in this room. It's a link to the truth. Mr. Natsume, you purchased these books 4 days ago at the second-hand bookshop. That's just a coincidence. In that case, you will bring the same 3 titles from your own room, will you not? This very moment. No, never, non-negotiable. If you can't bring your own copies here, then proof these books are in fact yours. Having purchased these books 4 days ago and returned to your lodgings, you were arrested the very next day. So you could have conceivably so you could have could conceivably have brought the books here on that evening, but you never mentioned that. In other words, you could have only brought these 3 books here to the victim's room. Last night, having returned to your lodgings after the trial concluded at the Old Bailey. In short, there is only one possible conclusion. The victim died here in this room last night as a result of poisoning. The same night, the victim had a visitor. And that visitor was you, Mr. Soseki Natsume. Thus concludes the final act of Urok Shome's Great Deduction.